The courtroom was silent, until a 3-year-old looked straight at the police dog and said 5 words that no one expected. In that moment, the entire court froze, and what happened next left every single person in awe. The courtroom was silent, heavy with a tension that could almost be felt in the air. On the witness stand sat a 3-year-old girl, so small that her feet dangled far above the floor. Clutching a faded, soft blanket to her chest, she kept her wide eyes fixed on the ground, refusing to look at anyone. Around her, lawyers murmured quietly, exchanging glances filled with both worry and anticipation. The judge watched with gentle patience, knowing this testimony could change everything. The gallery was full, yet no one dared to speak, afraid to break the fragile calm that hung over the room. Even the jurors leaned forward, holding their breath, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Then, the doors at the side of the courtroom opened, and in trotted a large German shepherd, his black and tan fur gleaming under the lights. The soft sound of his paws against the floor echoed through the hall. All eyes turned toward the dog, sensing that his presence was no ordinary event. The little girl glanced up for the first time. The German shepherd walked confidently into the courtroom, his vest reading Police K9, Comfort and Detection. His sharp eyes scanned the room, but there was no aggression, only a calm alertness that instantly commanded respect. The murmurs in the gallery faded to complete silence as he approached the tiny witness stand. Even the judge leaned forward slightly, curious to see what would happen next. The little girl hugged her blanket tighter as the dog stopped in front of her. The K9 tilted his head, his warm brown eyes softening, and gave a quiet, almost reassuring huff. Slowly, he placed his front paws gently against the stand, bringing himself closer to her level. The girl's trembling stopped for the first time that morning. One of the officers nodded to the judge before kneeling beside the dog. "This is Rex," he said softly, his voice carrying through the room. "He's here to help you feel safe." The girl peeked up through her long lashes, her lips quivering. The gallery watched in awe as the dog laid down beside her chair, his head resting protectively on her tiny foot. The transformation was instant. Her shoulders relaxed, and a calmness filled the space that hadn't been there before. Everyone knew something extraordinary was about to unfold. The little girl's small hands twisted the edge of her blanket as she glanced at the German shepherd lying by her feet. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then, as if gathering courage, from the gentle weight of Rex's head on her shoes, she whispered, "He's my friend now." The judge leaned in, straining to hear. Her voice grew a little steadier. I was scared," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "But he came to me, and I knew I wasn't alone anymore." Rex lifted his head and gave a soft, almost understanding whine, and the courtroom watched the girl's fears slowly melt into trust. The prosecutor exchanged a glance with the officer, realizing that the child was finally ready to share her truth. Taking a deep breath, she clutched her blanket tighter and began to speak. "I remember the night. I remember the loud voices. I hid under my bed, and I couldn't move because I was so scared." Her voice trembled, but Rex nudged her leg gently, and she managed a small, brave smile. "But now, I'm not scared anymore." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the gallery as the girl's words, simple yet powerful, echoed in the silent room. It wasn't just testimony. It was a moment of pure, raw courage from a heart that had been so fragile only minutes ago. The room seemed frozen in time, every person afraid to even breathe too loudly. The judge leaned forward with his hands clasped, his face softening as he watched the little girl gather her strength. Her tiny fingers stroked the German shepherd's ear, and the dog's calm presence filled the entire room with an unspoken sense of safety. For a child who had once known only fear, this was a moment of unimaginable bravery. The prosecutor spoke gently. "Do you remember what you saw that night?" The girl hesitated, glancing at the towering figures of the adults in the room. She pulled her blanket closer but then looked into Rex's loyal eyes, and a flicker of determination returned to her. "I saw him," she whispered, pointing toward the man sitting at the defense table. The room collectively inhaled, the weight of her words pressing against every heart present. Rex let out a soft, approving bark, almost as if he understood the importance of her truth. The girl continued, her voice firmer now. "He yelled, and I got scared, and then he hurt Mommy." The words hit the courtroom like a shockwave. A tear rolled down the judge's cheek, and the defense attorney shifted uncomfortably in his seat, knowing that the innocence of a 3-year-old could sway the entire case. That moment, everyone in the courtroom realized that this wasn't just a trial. It was a story of courage, trust, and the unspoken bond between a child and a dog who had given her voice back. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. Every person's gaze shifted between the little girl and the German shepherd sitting faithfully by her side. Rex's presence wasn't just comforting, it was transformative. He had become her shield, her courage, and now, the unexpected hero of the trial. As the defense attempted to discredit the child's words, the little girl began to tremble, shrinking back into her chair. But Rex suddenly stood, placing his head gently in her lap. His warm brown eyes seemed to remind her that she was not alone. With one hand buried in his fur, she straightened up again. "I'm not lying," she said firmly, her voice echoing through the silent courtroom. The jury members exchanged glances, their expressions softening. They were witnessing something that went beyond evidence and legal arguments. This was raw, undeniable truth delivered by a child who had found her voice through the trust of a loyal canine. Even the judge paused to collect himself, visibly moved by the bond before him. By the time the child finished recounting her story, the room was filled with quiet sniffles and watery eyes. Rex remained by her side the entire time, calm and unshaken, his protective aura undeniable. In that moment, everyone in the courtroom understood. This wasn't just a service dog. This was a hero who had given a little girl the strength to speak against the darkness. The courtroom fell silent as the judge prepared to deliver his final statement. The air was heavy with anticipation, the only sound being the faint rustle of papers and the soft, steady breathing of Rex, the loyal canine, lying by the little girl's feet. Everyone seemed to sense that this was a moment that would leave a lasting mark on their hearts. When the judge finally spoke, his voice carried a mix of authority and compassion. He acknowledged the bravery of the 3-year-old girl and the extraordinary role Rex had played in helping her share the truth. "Sometimes," he said, pausing as if to hold back his own emotion, "justice requires not only law, but courage, loyalty, and love." His verdict brought closure to a case that had gripped everyone in the room. The little girl's mother scooped her into her arms, tears streaming down her face, while Rex wagged his tail softly, sensing the relief and joy around him. Even the toughest officers in the room wiped their eyes as the weight of the moment sank in. The K9 had not only helped bring justice, but had restored hope in a place where fear once lived. As the courtroom emptied, the little girl knelt beside Rex and whispered something only he could hear. He responded with a gentle nuzzle, as if promising he would always protect her. Everyone who witnessed that moment left with a heart forever changed, reminded of the silent heroism of a dog's love.